Hello, third grade mathematicians. It's Mrs. Moore here to teach you all about bar graphs today. Our targets for today are I will name and describe the parts of a bar graph, and I will solve word problems using information presented in a bar graph. Now would be a really great time to get out your bar graph resource so that you can have it right next to you as you follow along. Please either print it out and have it next to you or just pull it up on your screen so it's available. Before we get started with this wonderful new learning, I want to see what you already know about data and graphing. Why don't you take a second and pause the video and tell me, where do we look first when looking at picture graphs, and what are the important components of a picture graph? You will find that this information is very similar to our bar graphs today. You're right, you always look at the key first because it unlocks the picture graph and tells you the value of each symbol. Then you go and look right at the title because it tells you what the graph is about. Remember it as the main idea. Then you look at the specific categories your picture graph is broken into. For this one, it was different grades and the number of students in each grade for book club. Then you know the symbol is very important because it represents a specific amount of data. And if you ever forget what it represents, you can always look right at the key. Keep this locked in your brain because this information is going to make you very successful with bar graphs today. So here is our new learning. Today, we're learning all about bar graphs, which you will find bar graphs are very similar to picture graphs. So in bar graphs, the first place you look is actually the scale. The scale is the number line on the bar graph that's used to show amounts. Look there first to see the number the scale is increasing by. Wonderful. After you look at the scale, you look right at the title because the title tells you what the graph is about. For this one, the title is Students Eye Color. Cool. After the title, you look at the categories. Just like picture graphs, the categories tell you the specific types of data. For this one, it's the number of students for each eye color. Wonderful. So you guys already know so much wonderful information about picture graphs. I want you to take a second and pause the video and really study this page so that you're able to tell me how picture graphs and bar graphs are similar. Pause for a second and just determine how picture graphs that we're very, very familiar with and bar graphs, which is our new learning today, our new type of graph, how are they the same? I hope that you were able to determine that they're the same because they both have the same purpose. The purpose of both of these is to compare data. The only difference is picture graphs compares data using symbols, and bar graphs compares data using scaled bars. Awesome. How else are they the same? I hope you were also able to say that both have a title, and both of the titles tell what the graph is about. They also both have specific categories that you'll have to consider because the categories allow you to understand the graph. They tell you the specific types of data. Wonderful job. Okay, so now let's really dive in and try to understand how to interpret bar graphs. So just like how in a picture graph, you always go to that key first, in a bar graph, you always want to go to the scale first, boys and girls. The scale is just a number line that shows the value that each bar represents. I'm going to highlight our scale. So do you see the number line right here? This is our scale. And this wonderful scale, it shows us the value of each bar. So after you understand that the scale is a number line, I want you to determine what is the scale increasing by? What is it counting by? Okay, well, I see that for this particular scale, It's increasing by 2. It's counting by 2. It goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And so I know each line represents 2 students because that's my category, the number of students. So this particular scale is increasing by 2. But the reason you look at the scale first is because sometimes it counts by 1, but other times it will count by 2, 5, 10, even 25. So the first thing you want to do is go straight to the scale because the scale tells you what it is increasing by so that you're able to really interpret the categories. After the scale, we look at the title. It tells you what the whole thing is about. Well, this one is all about student eye colors. Then you look at the categories. Well, it's the different eye colors, green, blue, brown, hazel, and gray, and the number of students with each eye color. I'd like to give you a little challenge. So I see that the scale in this graph counts by, well, 2, because the difference between each 2 numbers is 2. It goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I see that the scale in this graph counts by the number. So if my scale is increasing by 2, I need to recognize that even though my scale is increasing by 2, it doesn't mean that all of my data is in multiples of 2. So I know that even though my scale is increasing by 2, I know that the number of students who have green eyes is right in the middle between 4 and 6. So you guys are extremely familiar with number lines, from rounding, from fractions on a number line, from elapsed time on a number line. So you're able to determine that if it's increasing by 2, if the number of students with green eyes is directly in the middle between 4 and 6, I know that the number that's right between 4 and 6 is 5. So I know right away that 5 students would have green eyes because 5 is the number that comes between 4 and 6. Similarly for brown eyes, I know that brown eyes, the number of students with brown eyes is between 14 and 16, right in the middle. Pause the video, boys and girls, and tell me what number comes right in between 14 and 16, right in the middle. Wonderful. Were you able to determine that 15 students have brown eyes because 15 comes right between 14 and 16? Great job. I have one more thing for you to figure out on your scratch paper. If you know that a bar halfway between 4 and 6 on the scale represents green eyes, how many students have green eyes? What is the number that comes between 4 and 6? You're exactly right. The number that comes between 4 and 6 is 5. Wonderful. Well, let's determine the number of students with each eye color. And boys and girls, you have this exact graph on your assignment today. So you can either pause and draw it with me, or you can print it out. Whichever materials you have would be perfect. Okay, so let's determine together. I see for green, the number of students who have green eyes is between 4 and 6. Well, you guys just told me if the number of students with green eyes is right in the middle between 4 and 6, I automatically know that 5 students have green eyes. I'm going to write it so that I remember. Okay, well, the number of students with blue eyes, I look right at my scale. Well, let's see, it's exactly, the bar represents the value of 12 because it's exactly at the number 12. So 12 students have blue eyes. Third graders, would you pause the video? And would you determine the number of students with brown eyes? Were you able to determine that 15 students have brown eyes? And the reason for that is because the number of students with brown eyes is halfway between 14 and 16. I know the number halfway between 14 and 16, right in the middle, is 15. Wonderful. Would you guys pause the video and determine the number of students with hazel and gray eyes? Great job. who was able to use their scale on this y-axis to determine that 14 students have hazel eyes because the bar hits the number line right at 14, and 14 represents my number of students, and 6 students have gray eyes. So you're going to use the information we just figured out together to answer some questions very soon. But before we do that, let's take a look at the other bar graph you'll be looking at today. Okay, so I know when I first see a bar graph, where do my eyes go first? You're exactly right. Very first thing I do is I look at the scale to see what my scale is increasing by so I'm able to really understand the graph. Who was able to determine right away that the scale is increasing by 10 each time? Perfect. I'm actually going to have you consider if it's increasing by 10 each time, well, on a number line, what would come right in between 0 and 10? What would this number right here be? You're exactly right. It would be 5. But we know just because 5 is right in the middle that all of the other numbers are represented too. So it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 10. So after we determine what our scale is, we look at the title to understand the main idea of the graph. My title is Ice Cream Favorites for 3rd grade. And my different categories are the different types of ice cream. So I know that this must represent the number of students who prefer each type of ice cream. Let's interpret this together. How many students preferred vanilla ice cream? So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 students. I'm going to write that down. How many students preferred mint ice cream? Did you guys say 40? Yes. I know my scale shows that 40 students preferred mint ice cream. How many students preferred strawberry ice cream? Ooh, pause the video. This one's a little bit tricky. Do some reasoning. Were you able to determine that 75 students preferred strawberry? Because my bar lands halfway between 70 and 80. And I know that right in the middle between 70 and 80 is 75 because it's 5 away from 70 and 5 away from 80. So it's right in the middle. And for chocolate, how many students preferred chocolate, boys and girls? You're exactly right. 50 students favor chocolate ice cream. Okay, 3rd graders, so now you guys get to do your task, and I can't wait to see it. This is exactly what your page looks like. I want you to remember, though, that you can re-watch this video as many times as you need to be able to answer these questions. You may also check your video resource, your bar graph resource, and have that right next to you because that helps walk you through the parts of the bar graph, and you can refer to that as many times as you need to. Okay, check your work very carefully before you submit and use your resources. Excellent work today, boys and girls.